Welcome to Digication Scholars Conversations. I'm your host, Kelly Driscoll. In this episode, you'll hear part one of my conversation with Carol Bartholomew, Principal of Polaris K-12 School. More links and information about today's conversation can be found on Digication's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Full episodes of Digication Scholars Conversations can be found on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Hello, Carol Bartholomew. It is so good to see you today.
Hi, Kelly. Welcome. Thank you for letting me join.
Absolutely. Welcome to Digication Scholars Conversations. And for everyone listening, this is the amazing Carol. She's the K-12 principal at Polaris, an optional school within the Anchorage School District, serving grades K through 12. So, Carol, to kick off our conversation today, I was realizing with all of the interactions that I've had with you and the faculty and the students there, I don't think I have learned, and I'm sure our listeners would be interested in knowing how you made your way to Polaris. Could you tell us about that a bit?
Yeah, so this is, I was just doing the math, and this is my 36th year in education.
Wow.
And I started teaching in Florida, moved up to Alaska, and was working with Title I. And I found that I was always teaching a little outside the box
Mm-hmm.
and always doing things a little bit different, not fitting in that norm, wanting always to kind of skirt things a little bit. And I found Polaris, and Polaris is a school where we really focus on helping students become self-directed learners, lifelong learners, really working to empower our students, really being active participants in their own learning. And it was a great fit for me. So I came to Polaris in 1999 as a teacher
Okay.
and taught for many years and took on many different types of leadership roles. And then eventually moved into an assistant principal position here
Mm-hmm.
and then an acting principal position. And for the last 10 years, I've been the principal here. So since the school opened in 94, there has been just two principals total. Denise, who started the school, and myself. Um, so it's just been a great fit. It's been the school I've always wanted to be at. I choose
That's
to be at.
wonderful. Oh, what a great story. When you first started teaching, what grades were you teaching?
I first started in first grade.
Okay.
Um, I eventually moved into what was like a modified primary grade and then kindergarten because the principal kept telling me that, what you want to do is awesome, but everyone else on your team is doing this. So maybe if you move to this grade where you're just kind of on your own and you can do what you want to do.
Uh-huh.
So it's way back then it kind of started with wanting to like buck the system a little bit and provide developmentally appropriate practices for kids. And
Yeah.
um, so it started way back then. I've been mostly a primary teacher. Um,
Hmm. Well, I have to wonder, we'll probably talk about this a little bit later too, but having that background and working with those younger students, I have a feeling may have played a part in you knowing that they were fully capable of creating e-portfolios and reflecting on their learning. So I feel like it's kind of
yes.
come full circle there somehow. So that's really interesting. I didn't know that about you. So you spoke a little bit about kind of Polaris's mission, but how do you think it's really a unique school, unlike others that you might find within the district? What are the things that you're doing that are different or out of the box, as you might
Yeah.
say?
So we're we're considered an optional program. And
Mm-hmm.
what that means for Anchorage School District is that students apply through a lottery system. Um, we don't have bus transportation, so all of our parents commit to driving their student to and from school every day. So it takes a level of commitment from parents as well.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
as an alternative or optional type of a program, we have a lot of flexibility within our board policy to use curriculum and instructional measures and student evaluations that
Hmm.
we believe more meet the needs of our students. And so the curriculum that the ASD is using is different from the curriculum we're using.
Interesting.
We
Okay.
use, as part of our evaluation system, our elementary students don't receive grades. Our secondary students do, for Carnegie credit purposes, but
Sure.
we
Yeah.
all maintain portfolios. And I know that's what we'll be talking about in a
Yeah.
bit.
We'll talk
Um,
about portfolios a
so
little bit.
you think so? um, so we have a flexibility with, that our classes are all multi-age.
Hmm.
So we have K1 students together, 2, 3 students, fourth and fifth grade students. And then within our secondary program, there are some classes that are just middle school students. So for us, that's
Nice.
sixth through eighth grade.
Yeah.
But some classes, like our electives and our advisory, which those are classes that include students grades 6 through 12.
Wow.
So that's something that makes us really unique in the district, is that all of our classes are multi-age. We are the only brick and mortar K-12 school in Anchorage, and we run not like you might see other K-12 schools. A lot of K-12 schools that I've seen across the country, they have a separate wing
Hmm.
for their secondary wing and their elementary wing. Ours are all mixed together. So as you walk the halls, I have a
And I've
K1 class
seen those
next to a
beautiful
secondary
halls.
class.
Yes.
So yeah, so it's all intermingled, and our students work together, and they have buddies, secondary and
Hmm.
elementary buddies. And so it really provides some unique opportunities in that way. And we also have intensives, which are a pretty unique opportunity within our school that other schools aren't offering within the district, with the exception of one other secondary school. We They're 2 to 3 weeks study on a particular topic. So
Okay.
students work with teachers, and we create curriculum based on student interest and student need.
Nice.
And
Hmm.
students spend that 2 to 3 weeks on that topic, and they range. They range from um, physics, and students went out into the field and they went to a billiard hall and learned about the physics of playing pool. And we've
Oh,
had
fabulous.
fencing and bread making and skiing and snowboarding. So they run the gamut. Um, we also have students who teach intensives or teach classes. It's very
Hmm.
encouraged here. This last quarter, even though we were online, I had a student who was teaching a ukulele class to other students.
Oh, that is fabulous.
So it definitely, some of those pieces are very unique. We also have an advisory period for our secondary students that is not just your academic credit check in your, like you would think of your traditional homeroom, but they really work on developing leadership skills, getting them involved in the community, doing community service.
Hmm.
So it's a much broader picture of what our advisory does than just a homeroom type of a situation.
And does
So
that
there's
start in the
those
lower school as well, Carol?
that starts in sixth grade. So in our
Okay.
elementary school, our classrooms are called family groups.
Hmm.
Um, all of our teachers go by first names, which is
Hmm.
definitely a unique feature. So our students are with the same teacher for 2 years in elementary. And again, the idea behind it being a family group and first names is that we want to have that sense of community. We want it
Yeah.
to feel like home,
Yes.
that extension of home, and it really just sets a tone for how our interactions are with our students.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the
Oh,
kind of a nutshell.
wow. That is just so lovely. There were so many things that you spoke about that I would just love to see implemented within other schools. I feel like the opportunity for students to kind of intermingle with grade levels, I can just imagine how that gives some of the older students the opportunity to teach and mentor and
Mhm.
inspire the younger students. And I can imagine the younger students getting the older students to just kind of think about things differently or kind of reignite their
Mhm.
excitement about certain subjects because they can see their own interests in it. So that is just a beautiful thing. And I've had the opportunity to visit your school a few times and feel that different kind of energy that you have walking through the hallways and even going into the classrooms. Everyone just seems very comfortable in their space and interacting, and the students were so welcoming and ready to talk to us and share their work with us, and were just incredibly articulate about their work and experiences and things they care about. And I think it is because of that community element that they have that level of comfort in talking to people about who they are and what they've done. So thank you so much for sharing that. It helps provide some context to what we're going to talk a little bit about next. So I was curious when you first got introduced to portfolios, and this could be paper portfolios or electronic portfolios.
Okay. Yeah. So when I started working at Polaris back in 1999,
Yeah.
um, part of what Polaris established prior to that, when as part of the philosophy of the school, was this portfolio system. And the school had been only open about 5 years at the time when I
Mhm.
joined the staff, and there were some pieces that were still being tweaked and worked out. When we would sit down and meet and talk about portfolios, we were these big binders
Yeah.
and, the pieces of paper stuck in them. And we would look at our computers and say, there's got to be a way to do this, because we had always wanted to try to capture this K-12 experience.
Mhm.
We have students that, some of them only stay through elementary, some stay through all of middle school, and then we have others that stay the entire K-12 with us.
Yeah.
And how do we
Yeah.
capture that across all the grades, all their time here? Um, because that bulky binder just you couldn't capture many years. 1 year, filled a binder, inches thick. And
Mhm.
we would look at our computers and literally the floppy disk and say, how do we
Yeah.
make this happen? And so we really couldn't find a way. The technology wasn't there.
Right.
So it was a conversation that continually came up. Over years, we continued to refine what portfolios were and define them at Polaris.
Mhm.
Um, Once we started getting that technology really in place, and teachers were getting their own laptops that they could utilize
Yeah.
in the building, we really started seeing that we had this potential to shift into this like electronic portfolio world.
Mhm.
And if I'm jumping ahead, you can
Oh,
stop
no, go
me.
ahead. No, you're
But
great. You're
okay.
great.
So when we started thinking about that electronic portfolio world, um, a friend of mine who is also a colleague at the University of Alaska Anchorage, we were having this conversation about portfolios and how do we start moving into this electronic world? Do we use what kind of website? Do we use a Weebly? What does this look like for us?
Mhm.
And she said, I know someone who UAA just hired. That would be, our Paul Wasco. And let me connect
Mhm.
you up with him. And so we had a meeting um, at an amazing restaurant here in town, and enjoyed our
Oh, which
company together
one?
and just had some cash. Midnight Sun Brewing Company.
Oh, that is a nice place.
And we just had casual conversation, getting to know each other and what we've been doing with portfolios up to that
Yes.
time. And that's when he introduced us to you and Jeff.
I
And
think he
things
might
really just
have
continued to kind of
called
spiraled from
me.
there.
I think he might have called me right after that meal
I'm
because he
sure he
was
did.
so excited. I'm thinking back. I think I remember this conversation, and I was like, "Well, absolutely, we will help them. What do we need to do? I'll set up a system right now, and we can give Carol an account, and we'll figure this out." But yeah, I remember. I like to walk and talk on the phone. I know some people are like. I remember kind of walking around my office, and he was just so excited. And since that time, he's done so much within UAA, but also the broader community and bringing it to other people. So I'm
Mhm.
so glad you guys crossed paths. And
It was very fortuitous.
yeah, well, some of the best things
Yeah,
are,
things really
it's just
took off from that
meant to
point.
be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's been
It
so
was.
fun to
And
be a
just
part of it.
yeah. And to give that shout out to Paul, we would not have been able to get to the point that we are with Digication had he not provided the support in those early years, because
Yes.
we weren't in a place that we had the capacity to do that. So having that partnership with UAA, that collaboration with them, really helped us in that ground floor, really getting the electronic portfolio piece up and running. And
Hmm.
now we've been able to take it from there. But it was pivotal that he and his team were supportive, of us and helping us get the pieces, worked out. And I remember conversations with you and Jeff early on, and um, we need this isn't working, and how do we do this? Just like our elementary needs this, and I know
Yeah.
we were just throwing ideas out at you, and have greatly. I mean, you've. I mean, of course, we're using the platform, and had you not worked with us and been open to our ideas, and working with us, and back, when Joan Watson was working with us, just
Yes.
really was key. Had we not had all those pieces, we would not certainly not be in a place where we are now. And we still have a lot to go. We're still
Yeah.
learning and growing, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit, but it's
Yeah.
and that's part of
Yeah.
our mission, is that we're an evolving program. We is part of our mission statement, and we've never really arrived. And so as staff, we embrace that as well. So,
Yeah. I think we have a similar philosophy here too. And I think we've talked a little bit about how uh, Jeff and I started creating Digication when we were teaching at Rhode Island School of Design, initially for our group of students. And I was teaching in the education program there. And they had a similar kind of experience. They had been creating those paper portfolios, these big binders, for quite a long time. And just logistically, they were running out of storage space. And they wanted the students to be able to kind of take them with them. I don't know how you handled that with your students when they were doing the paper portfolios, if it was something that they brought home or that you had to kind of store away. But I know that that was something that they felt like, they really wanted the student to own it, but the program needed a record of what they
mhm.
had done too. And with that kind of binder format, it was really rather impossible. So I joined the program at a similar time
Yeah,
that you
that's
were embarking on your journey at Polaris. So it's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and that was some of the barriers that we were running across with that binder portfolio. Is my daughter was a student from K through 12 here at Polaris, and I have all
Mm-hmm.
of her binders over the years because she graduated before we shifted into the
Yes.
e-portfolios. But as a teacher, students, we would keep the binders at school for the year, but then at the end of the year, they would go home.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, you had to find storage for, 24, 26 binders in your class. Um, but even bigger than that was the fact that students couldn't look back. They
Mm-hmm.
couldn't see work that they had as a third grader. They couldn't look back at what they had done as a second grader. And as a high school student, they couldn't look back if they were a 10th grader. They couldn't see their ninth grade year unless they saved their portfolio, they brought it
Right.
in. And we really wanted to capture and be able to build on those reflective skills, and kids
Right.
being able to really talk about and see how they're learning and growing over time, and that binder method just didn't allow for that logistically to really happen. So that was a piece that was always missing,
Yes.
that we tried, but if you don't have the artifact in front of you, it makes it tricky to really think back and reflect and see. So having it in electronically has really been allowing our students to have that broader perspective of growth over time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we're all about this idea of making learning visible. And I think you're absolutely right. We may have a general feeling about the growth that we've had, but when we have it right there and we can really see it, is when I think the students really start to internalize the incredible growth and the value of the curriculum that you have designed there. They can see very clearly that these are the things that are happening along the way and how they're transforming, not just academically, but as people, right? Um,
Right.
so yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think one of the kind of key pieces that has led to your success with using e-portfolios, once you did make that transition from the paper, was that you already had a very strong understanding of the the power of creating that kind of documentation of the experience,
Mhm.
reflecting on that learning, and having the student spend time looking at it and sharing it with other people. It's great they had the opportunity to bring it home and share it with their families as well. Um, but you're right. When they were in these kind of distinct binders, very often they probably didn't get stored and probably weren't dusted off and brought back out into the open very often. And the online format makes it much easier to do so. And I know from my visits there that you have students that start in kindergarten and develop them all the way through their time at the institution. And I don't think it's been 12 years yet that we've been working with each other. So, how far have
No.
the original kindergartners come with their portfolios?
Well, I was just trying to think about that. I, I'm trying to think back it how long it's been.
I'm thinking they might be in
It's
fifth
not
or
been
sixth grade.
that I don't think they're out of elementary yet.
Yeah, I
They're
think it's fifth
because
or
it's not been
sixth.
that long, because we started a little bit of a slow roll-in process, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and I think you did a great
We
job with providing professional development to the teachers, and some of those have become significant kind of leaders in the charge there. So um, that's been good. So maybe they're fourth grade. We'll have to check.
I'll have to look back. Yeah.
But so for those students, they started in kindergarten all the way through fourth grade. And do they put everything in one portfolio, or do some of your students have multiple portfolios that they're using in different ways?
Right. So it's a little varied. In our elementary,
Mm-hmm.
our our each of our family group teachers, again K1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, have they have a portfolio template that they use with their students, and they look a little bit different simply because we want them to be developmentally appropriate and easily
Mm-hmm.
accessible to the students.
Sure.
Um, the levels of scaffolding needed for our K1 is much different than our 4 5. And so the K1 portfolio looks very different from that. And so we intentionally have set up that the teacher has their template that they're using with those students. But
Mm-hmm.
as they continue, what they can do is they can link. So they've been able to link previous portfolios to current portfolios.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as our students move into our middle school program and our secondary program as a whole, because they're with an advisor for that entire time of 6th through 12th grade, um, their advisor, they have a portfolio that they create in their advisory, and that stays with them for the entire 6th through 12th grade experience. And then they can link in their elementary portfolios. So, uh, yes and no to your question.
Yeah, it sounds
It
like
really
you've
was just what their needs were.
exactly, exactly. That's great. And you mentioned that the some of the teachers are using a template to kind of start this process. What are some of the elements that are part of that template that you have found to be effective? I'm sure over this time period that's been tweaked a little bit.
Yeah. So, um, overall, our as a whole staff, we have certain requirements, if you will, of what
Hmm.
should be within the portfolio. And again, these are things that we've worked with as a staff over time to agree with and to come up with a group commitment to. And so every student has basically an introduction or an autobiography type of a page, or in our primary it's an about me page.
Hmm.
um, so everyone has something that just is an introduction to who they are. um, and then there are our art section with artifacts. So in the different subject areas, again depending on whether it's elementary or secondary, whether it's their subjects or their core classes, their by period, um, there's a section for their artifacts and reflection of with their artifacts. There's a section where we talk about what many of our staff call the overall big picture reflection. And so
Hmm.
overall thinking about your learning as a whole. And again, that looks very different when we're talking, elementary versus our secondary program. Um, then we expand that because we want students to they're not just academic people.
Hmm.
They're so much more than their academics. And
Yeah.
so we have a section that is about their intensives that I spoke to a little bit earlier.
Hmm.
So they can put information about their intensives, community service that they participate in, things that they do outside of school. We want kids to have a space and a place for them to add if they're dancers or their sports, whatever they're doing outside the
Right.
school
Right.
walls, to include in there. We've also um, been slowly adding in the 6 C's of 21st century education. And so
Mm.
we have completely implemented citizenship and collaboration,
Okay.
and we'll be adding creativity next year. And what we've done is we've created a framework, a basic definition of what that means to us at Polaris, and what
Mhm.
are the qualities of those pieces. So we just finished creating it as a staff for creativity, and we defined it, and then we have 3 areas that are the big overarching highlights. And then what we're going to be talking about next year is we don't want students to just be digging through, okay, this is an artifact that shows collaboration, and this is an artifact that shows citizenship, which is a little bit of what's happening right now as we're still working through. What we want to do is for kids to be able to look at work and say, wow, this is an example of me showing citizenship, or this is a time I had to collaborate. And we're talking about badges and things like that that students can mark on their artifact that this is an example of. So we've been slowly adding those pieces. So really that was a long way to say those are the key factors that are the key components of the portfolio that everyone includes. Again, it looks different at different levels. Some teachers, many of our secondary teachers, have students add a resume as well to that. And so it's just really trying to show the student not just as their academic self and reflecting on that, but also their self as a human being outside of the academics, and how they're using those 21st century skills, because we know that that's what they're going to use when they leave us.
This concludes part 1 of our conversation with Carol Bartholomew from Polaris K-12 School. To hear part 2, be sure to subscribe to Digication Scholars Conversations on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Digication Scholars Conversations is brought to you by Digication, a technology platform powering the most innovative e-portfolio programs in K-12 and higher education. Our website can be found at digication.com. This episode was produced by Drew Albanesius and Amanda Driscoll. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks for watching.